everyone. So my name is Uchenna Nwafor. Um, I've been designing for a couple of years now. Currently, I lead the design team at Fumiwo. Fumiwo is a credit scoring solution operating in Nigeria and France. About me. So today I'll be talking to us about designing for emerging markets. So yeah, that's what about. Um, so first off, I would want to say define what emerging market for us. Because of course we would have to, before you know how to design for something, just like in UX design, before the most basic part of solving a problem using design is to know what you're solving. Want to ask what are emerging markets? So when we talk about emerging markets, simply we are talking about um, let me use maybe a small space of market where the technology usage isn't as established as it should be, right? So we're talking about markets that are not really fully developed, markets where they have so many constraints. We talk about technological constraints. We talk about the economic constraints, and so many other factors, right? So this is just the simple and straightforward definition of emerging markets. So essentially, markets where they have there's a debt in technology, in the use of technology. They have economic challenges and so many diverse challenges, including low or poor education. So examples of emerging markets. So what are examples of emerging markets? The funny thing is between 70 to 80% of the markets worldwide are classified as emerging markets, right? So when we talk about emerging market, we are talking about the bulk of the market where we operate in. So for instance, Nigeria is an emerging market. You say, how is Nigeria an emerging market? Of course, in Nigeria today, we have issues bordering on the use of technology. We have issues bordering on connectivity. We have economic issues, and also the literacy level of Nigeria is also not as high as those you classify as not emerging markets. But Nigeria is actually I'm trying to be honest. I've been countries in Africa, like East Africa, I was in East Africa for some time, and I'll tell you, when you compare Nigeria and East African markets like Uganda, Ethiopia, you'd see that these ones are the real emerging markets, right? So in East Africa, those are examples of emerging markets, right? So when we talk about having known what emerging markets are and examples of emerging markets we currently have in the world, so we want to know the role of design in bridging accessibility and visibility gaps in emerging markets. So having known the what emerging markets are and examples of emerging markets, I don't know. I like trying to interact with audience when I'm speaking. So having known what emerging markets are and examples of emerging market, I think we can reduce the role of UX design in emerging markets. I don't know if there's anybody who would like to help us with just a from the top of your head, how do you think UX design will play a role in these emerging markets we have identified? Anybody?
I think I might want to say something.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
okay.
Yeah. So for emerging markets, like you had said, right? I mean, initially I would have thought of it as maybe like just new sectors, new industries, and all of that. But then, from the explanation you gave, say case study of East Africa, of which I have an idea as well. I mean, I've not been there, but then I have like a small hint of that. The role UX will play is to ensure that at the end of your work as a designer, you are not taking the idea of, for instance, say you're designing for France, and then just assume that that would work for Kenya. So what UX does is, in place of research and everything and all the UX parameters, you're able to ensure that you streamline your design or your digital product to meet the needs of that market.
Thank you so much, Joshua. I think you're on point there. You're on point there. So essentially, when we have established what emerging markets are, right? We talk about markets that have less education, markets where the maybe their connectivity low, markets that have infrastructural deficits. So all these are, when we talk about these are markets that are not fully developed. So when you now want to design for such markets, okay, Salome has something to say.
Yes, talking about designing for emerging market that has to let it comply with the rules and regulatory of the laws of that market. So you have to find out if you're designing a product for the entire for Africa, let's say Africa, you still have to like design, check out the laws that will be applicable for Nigeria, for Nigerian market, the Kenyan market, as you said. So, and then the local, you have to also do research in the local users. So you have to really make sure you check rules and regulations that binds the local users of your product. So that means you have to do research in Nigeria, the local users in Nigeria, local users in Uganda, in Kenya, and all the rest. And that's something I understand
Thank you
about
so much,
design.
Salome. Yeah. I think it's actually flowing. I love your response there, Salome. So I think you're on point. What Joshua also
But
said
for
is on
this one
point.
to sell
So
smartphone, you need to,
when you're designing,
or maybe you can
since
add
Sarah
it
knows
with like
as
your
well.
wares. Maybe
Hi
can
Sarah, could you
like
turn off your
maybe
mic?
maybe it comes with function. But if you're
Okay,
doing
Sarah is
kids,
not.
you have to maybe consider bonnet, maybe step band.
Hi
I
Sarah.
didn't hear most of what you said.
So, sorry, is she responding to the question? Okay, all right, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, so I think we've all made very very wonderful contribution to this topic already. So essentially, when you're designing for this kind of market as a UX designer, you have to check for accessibility and usability. For instance, if you're designing for the US market, for instance, you can't use the same you know you can't design for them in the same way you design for people in Uganda, for instance. If you're designing just the same way if you're designing for different age groups, so you have to actually make be sure that you're designing for the bridging accessibility and also usability for these markets. So let me give a real instance, for instance. So we talk about markets such as the markets in Uganda and East Africa, for instance. These guys are their educational level isn't as advanced as those in the other markets like maybe the US, the UK. So their use of technology isn't that advanced. So when you want to design for markets like this, you have to make sure that you have accessibility in mind, you have usability in mind. So these are some of the roles UX design plays when you're designing for such markets, essentially. Let's move to the next slide, please. Awesome, awesome. So having spoken about emerging markets, so let's just go quickly go through some of the characteristics of these emerging markets. So first of all, we've talked about the language and the culture, right? So we talk about language and culture for this emerging market. So when you're, for instance, sorry, I'll be using East Africa mainly because I have a product currently that I've designed for the Ugandan market, which is currently live. So I'll be making so much reference to Uganda and East Africa. So for instance, in these some of these emerging markets, right? The they don't have they have diverse languages, which is different, different from the everyday languages we use, right? Their command So their command of this of the English language, for instance, their cultural values, they are different from what is obtainable in other broader markets like UK, USA, like we have mentioned. So their use of languages is quite different. Some of them they don't really understand the English language as their level of proficiency in the English language is quite not to par, it's quite low, right? So also in terms of infrastructure, yeah, we talked about these markets being very infrastructurally poor, right? So for instance, we have when we talk about infrastructure, we talk about their internet speed. Already before we started this section, you guys saw how I was struggling with my network. So that is why I would say Nigeria also we can still be regarded as an emerging market. So you talk about their internet speed, right? You talk about power outages, right? So you talk about their bandwidth, the low bandwidth. So these are some of the infrastructural deficits you would find in markets like this, right? So for other markets like those advanced markets like we know, we you can't they don't have issues that are bordering on internet speed, power outages, and all of that. Those are not issues they are conversant with. So when you are designing for these are some of the characteristics of these emerging markets. So moving on, we also have the digital literacy variation for these markets, right? So when we talk about literacy, it doesn't really have to be educational advancement. Nigeria, for instance, Nigeria is regarded as one of the most educationally advanced countries in the world, right? Data it's actually backed by data. Most um, a large population of the Nigerian populace, a large percentage of us, we are graduates. We pass through the university system. A large percentage of us. That is not really applicable in some of these markets. We would say are advanced markets, right? They are not. But when, like I said, when you talk about literacy, it's not about the educational advancement, but we talk about the digital literacy, right? So essentially, when we talk about this, we're talking about the tech savviness of these markets, right? The tech savviness of these markets. For instance, we have our parents, for instance, they are some of them went to the university, most of them, let me say, our parents, they went to the university. But we would always find them struggling to use these our phones now, these touchscreen phones. It's always a struggle for them whenever they are using this phone. This speaks to their tech savviness, right? And also, it wasn't until 20 is it 2000 and is it 2005 or 2004? It wasn't until 2005 that we actually had the GSM in Nigeria, and subsequently the internet introduction of internet on a larger scale. But in markets like in advanced markets, these things are not this digital literacy. Yeah, digital literacy is very high, right? So we even you can see in these markets they have so many of their users who have who are technologically savvy, who are not first-time internet users, who have been, using the internet for quite some time, right? So these are some of the characteristics of these markets. So the fourth characteristics of this market is also the fact that most things that happen in this market is done on mobile. So you see that in markets such as Nigeria, Uganda, the percentage of people that access our products as UX designers, the percentage of people that access products, like a large percentage of them, say I think as much as 70 to 80%, they access products, digital products, on their mobile phone, right? There's a dearth in the use of desktop phones or laptop phones. So you see that most of these markets are mobile first markets, right? Even in instances where there are some products that they tell you that it's best you use it on a desktop device or a laptop, or you still see some of us would rather than either due to the fact that we don't have access to these desktop devices, you see we'll still use our phones, and the best thing we can do is to change our phones to desktop mode. Yeah, as much as that may solve our problems, you would agree with me that desktop mode on a mobile device is not it can never be the same as when you're using an actual desktop computer to access certain products, right? So we have a in these markets they actually practice a mobile first approach. So these are some of the characteristics of these emerging markets that we have to keep in mind when designing for these markets. So the fifth one on the list here, we have the financial inclusion gap. Hello, please confirm you all can hear me. Confirm you guys
Yes,
can hear me.
yes, I can hear you.
All right. Okay, great. So when we talk about financial inclusion gap for some of these emerging markets, we are talking about the bankability of users in this market, right? So if you by available data, by data available on the internet, you find out that a market like Nigeria has the number of people that are unbanked in Nigeria is actually very, 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 very low, high. I mean, okay, all right, okay. So yeah, so that's the last point. So like I said, um we have more than this. I just highlighted the five characteristics. We actually have more than five of these characteristics, things we can use to actually characterize emerging markets, right? So these are just five of them, right? These are just five of them. There are way more than this. So let's proceed. Next slide, please. Joshua,
Yeah.
can you next
Yes,
slide,
I'm on
please?
I'm on the next slide. Challenges.
Okay, all right, great. All right, great. All right. Okay, so now what are some of the challenges we actually face when we are designing for these markets? We've gone through the characteristics, some of the things that are peculiar to this market, right? So what are some of the challenges? Of course, these are not all of them. So we have some of these challenges that we can face as designers when designing for such markets, right? So I have five of them here. So first off, we've talked about infrastructural deficit, right? The low bandwidth and data, how expensive data is. So some of the challenges we actually you can face as designers when designing for some of these markets are the fact that we have connectivity issues. So we have the slow internet, the unreliable internet, just like my own. We also have data which is not really affordable, right? So you may want to wonder how does this really connect to a designer? For instance, when you're designing, how does this challenge? How does it affect you as a designer, right? So let's break down on the connectivity issues and then the some of the points listed there, right? So for instance, we if you are designing for instance, let's say you are designing a mobile application, right? You're designing a mobile application, and some of our you I don't know, some of us who have maybe development background. So there are some issues that you face when you're designing for a market that has connectivity issues. For instance, you want to design a mobile app, and this mobile app has or let me say a web app, for instance, and you know this web app has high is actually image heavy. So we have a website that is image heavy. So from the little I know about development, right, websites that are image heavy, they actually they take longer to load, right? They take longer to load, and they are not really they're not really friendly when you are trying to load them up in a very low slow speed internet, right? So these are some of the things you have to consider when designing for some of this market. And then when you're maybe designing for a mobile app, so in terms of maybe the mobile app you're designing is such that there are um, some widgets that would have to be maybe running in the background. For instance, there are some widgets that would have to be running in the background. And of course, you know that some of these background widgets, they actually consume data. For instance, aside consuming data, they also consume um, battery. They also consume phone battery, right? So mind you, some of this okay. I'm moving away from connectivity and also moving to power, um, um, designing for people who don't have unlimited power. So you see that these are some of the considerations you would have to um, um, have in mind when designing for some of these markets, right? So I've given two instances that point to the slow internet and the expensive data, and I also give an instance that points to a lack of reliable power supply, right? So you may want to, while designing, you may want to really optimize design for optimization. So what do I mean designing for optimization? When you're designing a web app, for instance, it's important to if you know that the market you're designing for has such slow internet challenge. So if possible, the sizes of images you're using, for instance, you have to take cognizance of the sizes of images, and that this is of course if you must include these images, right? You may want to tone down on the images you're using for such a market. For instance, you may want to, if you're designing maybe widgets that would run in the background, you may want to give the option for users to actually be able to turn off these widgets so that it doesn't lead to a case where users will say, this app they consume data. This app is always draining my phone battery. Stuff like this, right? So next thing is device constraints, right? So in these markets, for we have in these markets, being the fact that these markets they are poor, they have infrastructural deficits, they have so many problems we have listed initially. You find out that most users in this market they have they use older phones, and based off the fact that they use older phones, these older phones they are actually characterized with low RAM, limited storage, for instance, right? They have limited storage. Um, so in where I work, we conducted some user research, and some of from this user research in Nigeria, the result came back that 80% of Nigerians use Android phones, right? And out of these 80% of Nigerians that use Android phones, a larger percentage of them, I think up to like 60% of these users that use 60% out of these 80% of the whole smartphone usage in Nigeria, 60% of this 80, they use low-end smartphones like the Technos, the Infinix, the Itel, and the rest. From the research we did, we just had just a few, like 10% using high-end Android phones like the Samsungs and the Google Pixel and what have you. So with this, you would agree with me that these phones, of course, we know Techno, for instance, Infinix, they also have higher end phones, but of course, more people use the lower ends of this phone. So when you talk about device constraints in this market, you find out that, for instance, due to the fact that um, these users, they have these lower end phones, it means they have low RAM, low storage space, and of course the OS version of this updated, right? So I think I have an old phone which I'm not using. I think a Samsung A20. So I went to Play Store one time. That was just 3 weeks ago, and I wanted to download an app. And then the feedback I got was your version of Android, your version of Android is no longer compatible with this app, right? So as a designer, you may want to ask, how does this relate to you, right? So if you speak to a developer, they'll tell you that for instance, the application sizes, the application OS, some of them are actually influenced by how the app is designed, some of the technologies used on the app as well, right? For instance, I think I'm not really sure, but if you're designing with Flutter as regards to using cross-platform React to design a mobile app, I think the RAM, sorry, not the RAM, the size of the app is usually bigger. And from what I know, some of these are influenced by the size, the functionality, and whatnot about that goes into designing, implementing some of our designs. So these are some of the constraints we would actually face, challenges we would have when designing for these markets. The next one is payment limitation, right? Payment limitation. So um, if if we based on the fact that the the payment infrastructure in these emerging markets are not as advanced and as strong compared to what we have in the advanced markets. So you would have payment limitation challenges and a high reliance on mobile money. In East Africa, for instance, the the use of mobile money is very, very prevalent. As a matter of fact, for the East African market, for Uganda, it's actually they don't use this payment gateway. You have to integrate Paystack or integrate Flutterwave in order to make payments. So it's actually an e-commerce app. So when you're checking out, they check out using mobile money. So this is to tell you MTN Momo mobile money. So this is to tell you how heavily reliant these markets are on mobile money, and this is due to the payment limitation prevalent in this market, right? So the next thing is also the trust and security concerns that we have to that we encounter in these markets, right? So in these markets, due to the sorry, excuse me. So due to some of these reasons we have already highlighted, we would usually face a little bit of pushback and trust when dealing with these markets. In Nigeria, for instance, I know some people in Nigeria that they'll tell you that I'll never buy something online. I ask why. They'll tell you that so I'll come and put my device pin and my card online so that somebody would would now have access to my money. So these markets they are usually they are usually faced with trust issues and security concerns amongst users. And also, lastly on the list, we have cultural relevance, right? So this essentially is just I think it was Salome that actually spoke to this fact in the beginning. So it really points to the fact that, of course, you know that when you're designing for, yeah, Nigeria is an emerging market, Uganda is an emerging market, Ethiopia is an emerging market. It doesn't mean that when you're, okay, for instance, myself, if you're designed for one emerging market, it doesn't mean that what is applicable to that emerging market, for instance, Nigeria, it doesn't mean it's applicable to another market like Ethiopia, Uganda, for instance. So we have to deal with some of this cultural variation when dealing with some of these markets. So I don't know if there are questions so far before we move forward. I don't know. Please, if there are questions, of course there will be questions at the end. But if there are questions so far from what we have discussed so far, please, we can take them before we move forward. Okay, all right. I think that means we don't have any questions thus far. So we can move forward. Joshua. All right.
Yeah, I'm on the slide.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So what are the best practices when we are designing for some of these markets, right? What are the best practices? I think I've spoken to some of them. Why even talking about the challenges they face, right? So, what are some of the best practices when we are designing for these markets? Yeah, so I think I spoke to some of them, so I'll just brush through this. So, in terms of the connectivity issues, and then the fact that these markets usually experience low bandwidth, I think we already see apps that are lightweight, right? Having apps that are lightweight, having that are also lightweight that consume less data and that can function in slow internet markets that are characterized by slow internet, right? And also the use of progressive web apps. I hope we know what progressive web apps are.
Well, I don't.
You do? Who doesn't know
I
what
don't.
progressive web apps are?
I
Please,
don't.
raise your hands, please, if you don't know what progressive web apps are. Just signify by raising your hand. Okay. Wow. Okay. All right. Okay. So let me explain a little bit. So when you talk about progressive web apps, it's actually it's a term used mainly in development, right? It's used mainly in development. So essentially, progressive web apps are apps that function in different how do I put it? That these are apps that are built on maybe web platforms that can also provide experience as if they are on as if they function on as if they are mobile apps, for instance, right? So these are apps that let me I don't know an instance that I will give. Um, let me see. Let me think of one instance. I can't think of an instance now, but essentially these are apps that can function both on the web, and then when you take them to the mobile app, they behave as if they are mobile apps. Okay, yes, I think I just remembered an instance. How many, there's this app I used for an inspiration one time when I was designing a marketplace application. It's called Equid. Equid. It's called Lightspeed by Equid by Lightspeed. Let me drop a link to the application. Oh, I think my chat box is not working. I wanted to drop a link to the application, but I don't know if I'll be. So essentially, when they are these apps, when they are based off the technologies they are built with, when they are so for instance, the app is a dashboard, for instance, and then you access it on your desktop app. It has all those things that are those characteristics of a regular dashboard. We have the depending on the type of navigation you use, if you're using a top navigation or a side navigation for your dashboard, that is what the app looks like on the web platform. When you now switch to the mobile platform, for instance, if you see that the app would look like a mobile app. So you have all those bottom navigations and everything. It will look like a mobile app. So these are the behaviors of web apps. These are how web apps behave essentially. So these are essentially what web apps are and how these are the behavior. I don't know if I was able to explain it accurately. So example of a web app is Equi. I can't drop it on the chat box for some reason. My chat box is not opening. ID. So this is one example of a progressive web app that I interact with on a very daily basis, right? So these are some of the best practices for web app. I don't know if there are questions before I proceed. Okay, Salome, please.
So I yesterday I was able to get to know heard about progressive web apps. I think all these web apps that can work across devices, like as a web and also as an application. And I think if I can sit down, I think I've interacted with a few apps. Coursera, I could say Coursera is also like a web, and at the same time is also an application. So it can work across the two
Across platform.
across
Exactly.
platform. Yes.
Exactly. So that is what I was trying to say.
Mostly is I was told that mostly is mobile developers that develop WPAs, and I think it's the main thing that is money. Most of the companies now they are going for the PWAs now,
Exactly.
because it's
Exactly.
actually is more affordable. It's
Yes.
reduce cost and the rest.
Yes. Now you're speaking to cost, right? Now you're speaking to cost. Exactly. So I think Salome just helped us further there to speak to web apps, right? So essentially, how these apps help in when we're designing for emerging markets. So as based off the fact that we know that some of these most people in these markets they don't have the luxury of having multiple devices. So you see, with the idea of a progressive web app, we can easily reach this some of people in this market, right? So next is designing for low-end devices, right? So I think I've spoken to that. So optimizing UI performance, right? So I remember I spoke about how your UI, how the UI is actually has an effect on app size, app speed, and upload time, and all of that. So when we are designing as designers, we should have it at the back of our mind that this market I'm designing for, they have this peculiar challenge. So as much as possible, we have to optimize our images. For instance, we have to do away with images that are not really necessary. So all of this would help in optimizing our UI. And in the long run, if it's a mobile app, probably reduce app size, make the app function better in a low speed environment, a low internet speed environment, right? So next is leveraging on mobile app and cash on delivery, right? So already I spoke about how in East Africa, for instance, their checkout is mainly they use mobile money mainly for their checkouts, right? They use mobile money mainly for their checkout. Remember, we spoke about the aside the financial inclusivity of these markets. We also spoke about trust, right? So we also spoke about trust. So the use of mobile money, which is what is prevalent in this market, because okay, let me give you an instance. While I was designing being used in Uganda, when it came to the checkout, I was doing the normal checkout we have in Nigeria here, checking out using the regular um, Paystack, Flutterwave, and payment gateway. It wasn't until some of the people I was working with who were on ground in Uganda that actually carried out research that told me that no, that in Uganda, even if we are going to have this um, payment gateway checkout, that we have to include mobile money payouts and the use of cash on delivery, right? So these are what people in these markets are conversant with, right? Also, let me touch on the fifth point, which is also trust. Aside the fact that this is what they are conversant with, they also have trust issues, right? They also have trust issues in terms of security. They don't know how secure they will be, how secure the product is using, and they'll be like, I can't enter my data, my financial data on this app, stuff like that, right? So also, I spoke earlier about the use of local languages and cultural differences in these markets, right? So, for instance, why they use why there are some of these markets they use English language, right, for their for communication. Their grasp of the English language isn't as advanced as people in advanced markets, right? So this is where we have to prioritize the use of local language, simple languages if you're using English, right? And also, I'll give you for an instance. Um, that was in 2022. I was designing for an edtech application, an educational application called Cloud Notes. It's still in use currently. So it's both it's an edtech app for both teachers, students, and their parents. So it's an all-inclusive edtech app. So it's used by both parents to check the result of their words. It's used by teachers to record exam scores, set scores. It's used by students for CBT exams and all of that. So it's actually a robust application. It's called Cloud Notes. So So when I was designing for this application, we actually encountered, after designing, we carried out some, um, you know, user first, after launching, carried out some feedback. We interviewed some users to get first-hand feedbacks from users. So in this feedback, most of the parents, they complained at that they don't know how to navigate back to where they were on the app. For instance, if they click on see my students see my child's results, for instance, most of the complaint was like they don't know how to navigate back. You understand? So this was really quite a challenge for me, and it was confusing because. But what I did was after getting this feedback, I I went through the app because it's actually a both mobile and web app. I went through the app from beginning to end, and I saw that I made use of the back arrow, the chevron. It was the chevron I used for my back functionality, right? I was like, how can somebody see chevron, the chevron arrow, that's the back arrow, and say that they don't know? It's not as if the arrow was too big, was too small, rather. How would somebody see that and say that they don't know how to navigate back to where they were coming from? So what I did was, rather than just using that chevron arrow to indicate that you have to go back to where you're coming from, in addition to that chevron arrow, I added back. I added back. I added the word back to to the um, to the chevron arrow. So I just joined them together. So in addition to the chevron arrow that says back and that indicates you have to go back to where you're coming from, I added back. Right? I added back. After doing that update, we released it a second time. Went for another user interview and user testing. This time there was an increased percentage of people that said, "Oh yeah, now I can navigate front. I can go back." But there were still some percentage of people that said they still can't find the back functionality. It was crazy. So I was like, well, okay, some of these parents, they are not really, apart from not being very tech savvy, they are not educationally advanced, right? So I went back and then I added go back in addition to the back and then the chevron. I added go back. You can imagine how I can added go back. It's not actually best practice because I believe back just an arrow. If you're designing for a technology tech savvy audience, just the arrow is okay. Or if you want to be generous and just back and the arrow is okay. But I had to add go back. So when we added go back to the application and released the second third version this time and carried out research. And you will not believe it that the percentage of people that said they didn't know how to navigate back was very, very negligible. Very, very negligible. So that was how we were able to solve this simple, um, this simple problem with that EdTech application, right? So we of course, in Nigerian local palace, um, our parents will rather say go back than back. Go back is more common amongst our parents, right? So this was the simple thing I did, and we had a jump in people that said they didn't know how to navigate back. We had a jump in people that said no, I don't know how to navigate back, and people that said now I can navigate back. So this local, essentially what I used was simple local languages, and then having the fact that this market this market is actually technologically deficit, educationally deficit. So these are some of the things we have to actually have in mind when designing for some of these markets. So these are this example I give is a real practical example that actually happened for an app, an EdTech app for that matter, I designed sometime in 2022. So these are some of the best practices when we are designing for these emerging markets, right? There are way more, right? But these are just some of the ones I highlighted for us. Um, so before Joshua moves to the next slide, I'll I'll call for questions now before we move to the next slide. I'm sure there must be questions now. So I'm waiting for your questions, please.
Or perhaps we could just gather all the questions in the comments section. So yeah, we can take that once. How about that?
Okay. All right. Okay. I think that works. That works. That works. Okay. So let's go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, I'm
Great.
there. I'm there.
All right. Great. So I just made some examples and case studies of some of the applications that were designed with emerging markets in mind, right? Some of the applications that were designed with emerging markets in mind. So we have M-Pesa. M-Pesa is not common amongst us. It's actually mobile money, a mobile money app that is used in East Africa. We have M-Pesa, we have MTN Momo. These are some of the mobile money applications that are very prevalent in Eastern Africa, right? We have Facebook Lite. Of course, we know Facebook Lite, in contrast to the regular Facebook. Facebook Lite consumes less data. Facebook Lite is, I think, I don't know the particular size for the regular Facebook, but I think it's at least 5 times bigger in terms of app size. It's 5 times bigger than Facebook Lite. I think we also have Instagram Lite, and just to mention a few. So these are just some of the few examples and case studies of applications that were designed with emerging markets in mind, right? So these are some of the applications designed with emerging markets in mind. Please, next slide. All right, so conclusion and key takeaways from all of this, from all that have been said. So, yeah, so like I've said, we have to, um, I think I said something about, okay, you have designed for Nigeria, which is an emerging market, and then now you want to design for another emerging market like Uganda, like Ethiopia, like Zambia, right? You want to design for that market. The fact that you've designed for Nigeria, you've carried out user research for Nigeria, you know how to, you've designed for a market like Nigeria, which is an emerging market. That shouldn't give you the whole authority that yes, I know what is needed for an emerging market. I know what is required when designing for an emerging market. So context is very key. Context is very key. Like for instance, in Nigeria, at least I've been privileged to interact with a lot of people in East Africa and Uganda. I'll tell you for a fact that our English language, for instance, our English language is way better compared to that of people in Uganda and the rest of East Africa. Next is also simplicity. Of course, we also know that as designers, we must ensure to aim for simplicity in all our designs, whether for emerging markets or for advanced markets. Simplicity is always important. Simplicity is always key, right? So also low bandwidth and offline readiness. Also, we should also have this in mind when designing for these markets. Low bandwidth, I talked about the use of optimized images, the use of the reduced use of images because of this bandwidth issue we usually face for emerging markets, right? We talk about the use of the application of trust, right? Trust is very critical in when designing for emerging markets, and of course, a large percentage, as much as 80%, if not more of users in these emerging markets they use mobile device to access our products. They use mobile device for to access our products. So we should always think mobile first. So we should always think mobile first. So I think that with that, I think we have come to the end. Joshua, please next slide just to be sure. Joshua, can you hear me? Okay, yes, I think so.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
I'm on the slide.
all right. Great, great. So I think with that, I think that brings us to the end of this session on designing for emerging markets. So I want to be I want to believe that at the we what we've said, what we've discussed, when next we have the opportunity to design for emerging markets, we would have some of these key points we've noted, some of these best practices we have noted, we would actually have them at the back of our mind and actually implement them whenever we get the opportunity or whenever we are designing for these markets. All right, thank you very much for your audience. I don't know if there are questions. I think this is the best time to take all of your questions, if any.